Da 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 da. Hello and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton King. The secret word for today is Frankenstein. Stuff's happening.
We've finished with Bruce Dickinson now. He's a goner. We've done that. We're moving on to our next one-off album. We're not doing a run, and it's going to be Stephen Wilson, The Raven That Refused to Sing.
Okay, episode 42. We wanted to do this because it's an easy one for us to do in a way because we both know it, we both like it. Yesterday I went to a Roald Dahl museum, which was pretty cool. Roald Dahl did some horror stuff. I like horror. This album is influenced by Edgar Allan Poe, but also sort of 70s and 80s kids' TV, the really frightening stuff. There's a lot of stuff from that period which is scary. I read about that, had to buy this album, and I'm not someone who's a massive Porcupine Tree fan, so that's interesting. But I had to have it because of the concept, and as it turned out, I really like it.
Let's just get it clear, yeah. This is a collection of pretty awesome songs, yeah. Pretty long songs, but that doesn't matter. We like that. Stephen Wilson's obviously got prog roots. He remixes a lot of the classic 70s prog albums,
yeah,
like Yes and people like that. And although Porcupine Tree and that isn't really proggy, this has real strong prog connections.
Yeah. This is the interesting thing that for a long time he sort of disliked being called prog, understandably, because obviously you're associated with this particular group of bands, and if you do that, you'll never be as good as those bands. Mm-hmm. You'll only ever be copying them, and that's true of a lot of bands like Spock's Beard and all that stuff. Is that they're good, they'll never be as good as Genesis or King Crimson or whatever. I understand why he wasn't comfortable with that. It seems he's got a complete turnaround because that you can pick up things on there. This this bit sounds like this band, this bit sounds like this band, this bit sounds like this band, like Spock's Beard. But for whatever reason, it doesn't make it as derivative as some of that other stuff. I don't know why that is, but I really like this. This is certainly my favourite album of that year, of 2013. I think my love of it isn't going to be universal. I think it's something that's going to polarise opinion because it has a different approach to Porcupine Tree. I think Porcupine Tree is much more the guitar sound, kind of a 90s sound. I think Steve Wilson actually said that one of the members of Porcupine Tree doesn't like the jazziness that appears on this, and either you like that or you don't. I think the sort of the complexity and the musicianiness of it, you lose the ambient quality of, but I think people might class this as retro because he's used mellotrons on it and things like that. I think that's a bit disingenuous. I mean, the Deadwing or whatever album from Porcupine Tree, that sounds like the 90s. That's not new either, is it? I mean, modern would be that band we were listening to, Priapasma. What were they called? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think that's right. Priapasma.
We're much more sort of very dynamic electronic music. So neither of them are modern. Both of them are retro. So that's not really much of an argument. Mm-hmm. But it's a different thing. Either you like it or you don't.
I love this, Kev. This for me is a sort of it looks back at the 70s, but it's a sort of guess what, folks. Okay, we got the 80s after the 70s, but it looked like this is the kind of stuff we were going to get for a while. We were getting into, all the concept albums, and the experimentation that was going on in the proggy scene was leading to something. And hopefully it was leading to this, which was really intelligent sort of music, driven by awesome musicians, but led by emotion. Because the emotion's what comes out in this, and I think that's what makes it sound more modern. Whereas the sort of the proggy stuff in the 70s, that was new then. So effectively people were sort of playing around with things, which gave it a sort of a different feel. I'll tell you what else is different about this. The sort of when you listen to sort of like the Genesis musicians talk about how they wrote albums, and it's sort of like it's almost sort of like an evolutionary process. Yeah. Well, I had this bit and he had this bit, and then Ted did some lyrics, and we got this wicked song out at the end of it. This feels very teleological. He had a very distinct idea of what he had in mind. Yeah, he basically wrote all the songs. He made demos of, and then went to the musicians and said, "Go." Yeah, go. And what you've got is a very distinct album with songs with similar themes. There seems to be a couple of threads because they're all effectively ghost stories that he wrote. Yeah. But with variety. Yeah, there's a huge amount of variety musically. Yeah. That's really important. Yeah. Ultimately, it just ends up being a fantastic listen. It is a fantastic. It comes from an idea. That's the thing. That's really what makes it prog more than anything else. Is the whole album stems from an idea rather than stemming from songs. Is art about ideas? That's the question. For me, yeah, because it's awesome. There's no sort of let up. There's no sort of I know what I like on this sort of playing little ditty that's going to be a single with maybe the exception of the title track, but it's not like. Well, they don't call it a single anymore. They call it the focus track. I mean, you could say that was a focus track. which, you know...
But he could have chosen Drive Home, which would have been an easier bit. So yeah, so we really like it, but there's going to be a polarised thing with it, I think.
That's strange, as you say that. I think it's quite universal. I could imagine, if you're a fan of early Radiohead, you'd be a fan of that.
Yeah, we saw this. We saw the concert of this, which I thought was fantastic. I've been to quite a lot of concerts over the years, and this was a good concert. Obviously, it's a solo band, so it's his band. But we were very lucky. We got Chad Wackerman on drums, but in the audience, unfortunately, at one point he was doing this great thing about the anniversary of the Mellotron, but he got some drunken guy shouting out from the audience, "I saw King Crimson in 1969, but your music, it's a bit too Miles Davis. You're going too like that." Now for me, it's like King Crimson and Miles Davis, is it? That's the best thing in the world. Either you like that or you don't.
First song?
Luminol. Now the great thing about the concert was, instead of having support, there was this video of a busker just standing there.
It must have been about 15 minutes long.
Yeah, and people are watching it attentively and nothing happens. But it was brilliant. And it got your attention, it got you focused on everything before the music starts, so that was great. Luminol it's about a busker who died, but it kind of didn't matter that he died because no one noticed him anyway. So his ghost, if you like, he's still there. As far as everyone knows, he's still there, and that's the story. That doesn't matter at all because there's hardly any vocals on it. Steve Wilson made an interesting comment, which is a very Zappa-esque comment, that it's great to have really good musicians to play your stuff, but you leave them to their own devices and they make kind of fusion sounding stuff which is only interesting to other musicians. This is fusiony stuff, and I'm a musician so I like it. I don't know if other people like it, but I think it's brilliant, and it's different to anything else on the album, but a brilliant opener. Just gives the whole thing a different flavour to the sort of typical sound of the album. It's
sort of like it's a very strange one to open it. I mean, opening with such a long, mostly instrumental piece, I don't think that would be considered normal, but it really gets you going into sort of what you're in for. And I think this was the first album with that bass player, Nick, whatever his name.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and it opens with the bass. And it's almost sort of like, well, I've got a new bass player, this is what we're going to do, sort of thing.
Yeah, and of course if you've read about the album, you're ready for these ghost stories, and you put that on and you're like, oh I see. And actually that guy, when he came on at the concert, I thought, 80s guy with big blonde hair, like, you tit.
I thought he was a woman.
But he was amazing, so it didn't matter. It was very, very good.
Yeah.
And that's great. It is a jam, it is fusion. It sounds like the Mahavishnu Orchestra, basically, and that's a good thing. And it isn't a derivative of it, it's just a good thing.
Track 2?
Drive Home. This one, I think he did say it's one of the few songs of his he likes that's under 10 minutes. I don't know if it was this song or it's something else. Apparently he was writing it and he was kind of, he probably wasn't going to use it, but then his guitarist did a guitar solo. And it is fantastic guitar solo. I mean, to talk about a new guitar solo, 2013, that's special, is something to talk about. But I think the song is good as well. I think it grows on you. When I first put it on, it was like, oh yeah, it's a kind of a Radioheady song. Good, yeah, kind of like Porcupine Tree, but it's grown on me.
It starts off quite slow, and sort of builds to a sort of crescendo at the end.
Yeah.
But what you see is a sort of the band are very good across the range. Like they're good in the softer parts of the album, and they're good in the heavier parts of the album. The theme again is pretty melancholic. That floats on people. I mean, Pink Floyd didn't write very happy songs.
Yeah, and they're very good.
Yeah.
So
and what does that say? And there's an interesting video to this one as well, which sort of it was being released as we're at that concert sort of thing. They were selling
the EP, Blu-ray EP. Actually, it was pretty cool. I remember when the album came out, and I was going to buy it. I hadn't heard it, but I was going to buy it anyway. And there was a Blu-ray version, and there was the normal version. I thought, well, I don't care about that. It's got the music videos on. Cares about that. The music videos are awesome. They're animated brilliance. And Drive Home is.
Yeah, well, I mean, we haven't really talked about the artwork on this. This is a sort of complete. It's a bit like Pink Floyd in the sense that that it runs straight through the artwork as well. The whole concept is sort of managed through the artwork, through the music, and through the videos. And Drive Home is an excellent sort of like stylish video that supports the story. Track 3,
Holy Drinker. Oh my god, this is awesome. Now this is where it really does sound like King Crimson, and not in a bad way, but it sounds a lot like One More Red Nightmare from Red, and it is the third track. It's quite a bit more complicated than Red though, and we get lots of saxophony stuff going on, the evil, nasty intervals and on the riffs.
Yeah, that sort of the opening section with the flute is sort of, it reminds me very much of sort of Gong, that sort of weird, all over the place. But it's not, it doesn't hurt my brain like Gong. It's actually quite sympathetic and fitting with the music, which is where I think the genius of this album is the sense that it's got that awesome, well, it's got experimentation in there, or what sounds like experimental music, but it is always led by the idea. It is always focused towards towards the idea and refining the idea.
Yeah, and that's because you've got one person doing it. Genesis never quite managed to do that. Even when they were writing the best album in the world, their democracy didn't work. You know, you needed one person to focus on what they were doing, and he didn't write the solos. The musicians played the solos, but obviously he would decide which one to use. And
I mean, that shows quite a lot of discipline. You could, you know, if someone plays you an awesome solo but it doesn't quite work the music, there's got to be a temptation to say, I'll put it in anyway. But yeah. I don't get the sense that any of that happened, because I mean, you mentioning the solos, I actually throughout the whole album, I never get pulled out of the song to think, oh, that was a good solo.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it all fits together, doesn't it? Yeah, because you hear a band playing, you don't hear now it's his turn, because it's good.
Excellent theme again about a priest who challenges the Satan to a drinking contest.
Yeah, and fails and goes down. Yeah. And at the end of it, you've got something which reminds me a lot of Mirage era Camel. Really dirgy riff at the end, stuff. A lot heavier, but what an ending to a fantastic piece of music.
Track 4,
The Pin Drop. If there was filler on this album, this would be it. But that's not to say it doesn't have some nice stuff on there. And it flows with the album, and the album will be lesser without it. It's the only song they didn't play live at the concert we went to.
I kind of agree with that. There's a sort of repetitive theme going on beyond the ghost story thing. It's people who stick together because it's convenient, or out of sort of habit more than anything else. And this is.
And there's the regret. And I think a big theme of the whole album is the melancholy of regret. The box of delights or something, or Chucky.
I think this. I don't know why. Well, I'm sure if he had the money, he would have made videos to all of these. I think with a video pointing that would be excellent again.
Yeah.
No.
It is time.
Number 5.
Watchmaker. This is it. This is the one. It's just a load of arpeggios, like Genesis, like a musical box or something like that. It's just continuous arpeggios, and that's for 12 minutes. You know, he's the best thing he's done easily. It is a fantastic piece of music, just musically. Does it sound like Genesis? It doesn't really sound like Genesis. There's Genesis elements to it. It sounds like Stephen Wilson. It is a brilliant piece of work. The storyline is almost exactly the same as the previous track. That's not a problem, is it?
No.
It's the same kind of story. It's like the next episode in the series of creepy short stories about a watchmaker who buries his wife under the floorboards because he's fed up of her telltale heart kind of stuff, and she comes back as a ghost. None of that matters because it's just musically fantastic. It
was during the concert of this live performance that you just sort of realise, actually, despite its complexity, and you would assume there's quite a lot of audio processing going on in there, it actually sounds better live, because the heaviness really, really comes out when it's blaring out from you at the stage.
I don't think I completely appreciated it until we saw it live. It was just fantastic.
It is sort of hair raising on the back of your arm at the end when it really kicks in.
And you've got all the sax solo stuff going on. You find a lot of people saying, oh, there's a big Pink Floyd influence on this album, which I don't really hear, but I know what they're talking about, and it's the sax bit on this song. It sounds like something on Shining Crazy Diamond, but actually I don't think that's where it's from at all. It's actually from Red. It is both of those things, but it's an original piece of music in itself. It's not like, well, that's cool because it sounds like this band.
Of course, we haven't mentioned the fact that this was engineered by
Alan Parsons, yeah. And finally,
the Raven that refused to sing track 6.
It's just 3 chords, isn't it? It's a mantra repeating 3 chords. It's very melancholy. This is the Radiohead track. Kind of a cool story. Very much a children's story. Very much the kind of story that people would say you can't tell that to children, but it is a children's story.
Wicked video.
Yeah, and I think that's the one where he gets to show off his voice. I do think he's got a great voice. There's a Tom York thing to it. He's not as good as Tom York, I don't think, but it is in that way, and he has his own thing. I noticed live he didn't play anything during this song. He actually sat down and focused on singing, I think. It didn't work as well live as Watchmaker though, did it? Which was interesting. It's better on album. Brilliant ending to a fantastic album, I think.
Title track is the last track.
I'm going to give this 5 eggs. I'm not going to give it 6 eggs. I think 6 eggs are reserved for Dark Side of the Moon and The Lamb and whatever. I can't find fault in it, but it hasn't had time to prove itself. You know, will I still think it's awesome in 10 years? Don't know.
I'm going to give it 5 eggs and 4 soldiers if possible. We haven't got any soldiers, but there we go. The fault, if there is a fault, I think there are links with Pink Floyd in the sense that he reminds me a bit of Roger Waters, in the sense of that idea he had in the wall coming to realisation.
Yeah.
But the difference between the Wall, the Raven That Refused to Sing is the concept in this. It doesn't hit on a deep down a level as the Wall.
Yeah, the universal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is something about the Wall which goes to the psychological core of a lot of people, which isn't on this album.
Yeah. Whereas this is, we like horror story.
But I think, he's got that in him. Okay, so what are we going to do next week then, Deep Thought?
A very new band.
And which band is that?
I'm not going to tell you just yet.
When will you tell us?
3.5
What? Not till next week?
million years. We would also like to ask a question to the people at home. What do you think of this album?
Is it neo-prog or is it something else? Actual prog?
Is it influenced by the 90s or the 70s? Goodbye. Da 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 da